So let's make a start. So I am going to just share my screen with you and we'll get going. I just want to do one more thing. Okay, we're away. Good. Right, so the talk's going to be in three parts. The first part is about planning your own motorcycle tour. Second, part two is about the preparation for your tour. And the third one is some ideas and tips about actually riding it. And then, as I said, we'll have a time for some questions at the end. So a little bit about me first. Yeah, I'm an avid motorcyclist, been riding since I was very, very young. But then, like most young men, get married, have kids, had to sell the bike and buy a more practical car. And it wasn't until 2006 that I bought my first Harley Davidson, a Road King. And I then did a 21,000 mile ride around America in one go, 4.5 months. And I wrote a book about that. And I've ridden in 28 different countries and 29 different states in the US. So I've realized I'm very lucky to have done that. But that sort of says that, I know a little bit about motorcycle touring because in 2013, I set up a Harley Davidson motorcycle touring company called Tour One. We've been authorized by Harley Davidson, and so we meet all of their strict criteria. I've probably designed about 50 individual motorcycle tours in Europe. So yeah, I know I've ridden all over Europe. So part one, planning your own motorcycle tour. The type of tour that you're going to do and your approach to it, there are many, many different types of motorcycle touring, because some people like mainly riding on their own on a tour. A lot of people like riding with a group of friends. Some people are just going to an event like a rally and they just want to get there reasonably quickly and then blast back. Some people really care about the best roads that they want to ride. They want to make sure they ride the very best, and they don't really care if it takes a bit longer to get there. Some people, not so many, but some like to combine riding with actually going to see places. That mainly means cities or large places, such as coast or whatever. Not many people do that, but some do, and they're generally not in a rush at all. I have one group of people. I ran a private tour for some Indonesians all around Europe, and all they wanted to do was go shopping and go to big cities. But most people, I think most of you included, will want to avoid cities as much as you can. Some people like to do a whole load of detailed planning for their tour. Some like to do a little bit, and some like to do none at all. They're more free-spirited and just wing it as they go. Some people want to camp. Some people want to go in hotels. Some people don't have any time to do any planning at all, and so they prefer to go on an organized tour like we run. And all of those have a massive impact on how you plan your tour, because you've got to try and take all of those different approaches into account for the various people that you're going to be riding with. That's if you ride with people, because this is an absolutely crucial question that affects so much, because riding on your own gives you many more options to do things the way that you want to. It means you can start riding each day whenever you want. You can stay in bed if you want to. You can stop and eat when you want. You can stop and take photos when you want. You're very much in charge of your own destiny, but that also means that you have to do all of the preparation work yourself, because there's nobody to share that workload with. And you probably won't get to experience it in quite as much of a fun way because you're not sharing it with others. Whereas riding with a group of friends, brings many more benefits. It can be much more fun, but you have to consider what the others want, and you can't do necessarily just what you want to do. So very often you will know the answer of whether or not you're going to ride with others or do it on your own. But that's the very first thing that you should sort out. Where to go? Lots of people say to me, Gary, you've been all over Europe. Where would you recommend that, good places to go touring in Europe? And You might or might not agree with some of what I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you a map, but here are my favorite places to ride in Europe. The first one is the Vosges Mountains in northeastern France, because that's relatively close to the UK. They've got big proper mountains there. Yeah, you've got, there's some in Scotland, there's some in Wales, but this is what I would call as substantial, almost alpine-like. So some great riding there. The French Alps, obviously, provides for fantastic riding. It's got the highest mountain pass in Europe, the Col de l'Isère, but you can only really do a lot of the French Alps in the summer after they've cleared the snow from the winter. The next area is the lower French Alps, and lots of people go riding there to do things like the Verdun Gorge and Route Napoleon. And that's really good because you can combine it with staying on the coast in places like Saint-Tropez, Nice or Monaco. If you've ever been to the Saint-Tropez European Euro Festival, the Harley Rally down there, there's, as you approach it, there's some fantastic roads to ride in Verdun Gorge and Route Napoleon. The next area, which it took me a long time to discover just quite how good it was, is the Benelux countries, like southern Belgium, Luxembourg, and riding in the Ardennes. They are some classic motorcycling roads there, in forest, in hills, and as we all know, if you've got hills, you get nice twisty roads that rise and fall and follow the terrain. So Benelux countries actually really good. The Black Forest, I love riding in the Black Forest because to get there you can ride two famous roads, the B500, one of the most well-known and one of the better motorcycling roads in Germany, and the B48, not so well-known, but is an excellent road riding through the forest. And of course, the Black Forest is quite beautiful, and it's not too far to get there. You can quite easily get there in a couple of days and have a few days there for a long weekend. One that's quite often missed is the Rhine Gorge, just south of Koblenz. It's about 35 miles long, and it's obviously where the Rhine has cut a gorge through the hills, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and all the way along the top of the gorge are the very classic German 16th and 17th century castles that sit along the top. Makes for quite interesting riding. Personally, I've never been, but you could go to Norway, as the scenery is absolutely wonderful. It's quite expensive now. I definitely want to go riding there. One of the problems was you used to be able to get a ferry across to Denmark, somewhere like Stavanger, but those ferries no longer run. So the only way of getting to Norway now is going across into the Netherlands or across on the Channel Tunnel, and then a long ride round. It takes about a minimum of about 4 days to get there. And I don't know many people have ridden it. That's because it's 4 days to get there, 4 days to get back. And if you're there for say 10 days, you're away for a long time. But it looks very, very good. The Czech Republic is very good, particularly the eastern end in the mountains close to the border with Poland. And so you can combine riding some damn good roads in eastern Czech Republic with going to see places like Auschwitz in southern Poland. But my favorite area entirely by far is riding in the Alps in northern Italy, Austria, Switzerland, and places like the Dolomites. You get some fantastic mountain passes. I absolutely love riding in mountains. If I was to select just one road to be my favorite in the whole of Europe, it will be the coast road in Croatia. It's a bit like Highway 1 in California. It's very twisty. It follows the terrain or the line of the coast, and it rises and falls with the terrain. With a fabulous road surface, it is possibly the best riding road in Europe. The next one, I love riding in Tuscany because that combines fantastic scenery and great roads in the low mountains, tall hills really of Tuscany. So you can ride to places like Assisi, Florence, Siena, and see some wonderful sights, stay in some great places, eat some fantastic food. My second bucket list item, place I've never been to, is to go and ride in the mountains in central Romania. Yeah, we've all heard of the Transfiguratan Pass, but there are lots of other roads in the mountains there that make riding in central Romania very good. It's a long way. It's a long way if you're going to ride from Wales or anywhere in the UK, really. I quite fancy going there and renting a bike in Bucharest and then just go, not on my own bike, but fly there. The Pyrenees Mountains in between France and Spain, fantastic place to ride. And of course, you can get there by ferry, but also, the central Spain and northern Portugal. On the way to Cascais, we rode through northern Portugal, and I was quite surprised by that, just how good the roads are up in the mountains there. And of course, as I said, you can get a lot of you can get to northern Spain, to Santander or Bilbao by ferry. That cuts out a lot of riding through the more boring places. Should I call it more boring? The less interesting places of France. And of course, riding in Ireland, fantastic. You guys are quite near to Ireland, and I imagine that quite a lot of you have been there. Personally, I love it, despite the vagaries of the weather. Sometimes it's a great place to ride. So they were my favourite places to ride. How do I, when I'm planning tours, how do I find the best routes and the best roads to ride? It's obvious. Don't use Google Maps. Google Maps is okay for an overview, but that's all. It'll either take you the fastest route or the shortest route. It won't pick out good roads for you. So unless you're just on a mission to get there, don't go near Google Maps. Use these things. Michelin maps. They are really, really useful. I use them all the time. And I've got literally hundreds of them in my cabinet over there. And it's almost as if Michelin maps were made specifically for motorcyclists because of this thing. Yeah, this is a photograph of a bit of a map. They show all of the scenic roads. They edge them in green, so you can see a few roads there. Here's a bit more of a close-up. You can see some red roads. You see the ones that are edged in green? That means they're scenic. What scenic means in Michelin maps terms is that they're generally a bit more hilly, and so they rise and fall with the terrain, and they get lots of curves. And it's just like the best motorcycle roads. It's as if they've just designed this just for motorcyclists. So what I tend to do, if I have no idea about where I'm going to ride, I just buy one of these Michelin maps and plot a route that uses as many of those roads edged in green as possible, and then connect them up in a sort of a, to ride as many of those as possible. There are other websites that you can find really good roads on. This one, Best Biking Roads, is very comprehensive. It could be too comprehensive. It's got so many, because so many roads that have been submitted by riders that you have to sort of sort the wheat from the chaff now. They do grade them, but there's a lot in there. There are other great websites that show particularly mountain passes and the conditions of mountain pass roads. Or you can find, if you're going to the Alps, there is a few books written by motorcyclists specifically about the better roads to ride, and forming tours just in the Alps. I'm quite often asked, how far can I ride in a day if somebody's planning a tour? And that obviously depends on the type of roads. It can be as low as anywhere from 125 miles up to 250 or 300. You probably wouldn't want to do more than that if you're on a tour. But I quite often say that measuring the number of miles that you can do in a day is probably the wrong way of working it out. It's probably better to work out how many hours you can ride for in a day. I always plan on about 5 or 6 hours of riding. because when you take into account stops and refueling and lunch and stopping to take that photo, 5 or 6 hours of saddle time normally equates to a full day of riding. So what I tend to do, if I'm planning a tour, I will plan the route that I think I want to take, help using all sorts of things, including these Michelin maps. And then I put that route into my sat-nav software, and it will tell me, and this is the way that I do it, it will tell me how far I can ride in 5 or 6 hours. And that's how I determine, that's how I'm going to ride, how far I'm going to ride that day. And that could be anywhere from 120 miles to 250, 300, because you can't just judge how far you're going to ride just by the number of miles. Do it based on time. Some people don't like using sat navs. I do. For me, I'll talk about that in a minute. For me, when I'm riding, it takes a lot of the stress out from where I'm riding, because I don't have to worry about where I'm going. I talked earlier about winging it or planning it in detail. And if you're planning a tour, this is a big question that you've got to ask yourself, because they're two hugely different ways of doing it. Because like me, some people want to plan everything in minute detail. If I'm doing a commercial tour, I know exactly where I'm going to stop, where the petrol stations are, where we're going to drink coffee, where we're going to park for lunch. I do everything in a lot of detail. But of course, some people just don't want to do that, obviously. And they're more of a free spirit person who likes to come out of a hotel and say, shall I go that way or shall I go that way today? And I get that. I've done both. When I did my ride around America, I winged it for 4.5 months. I had a broad route that I knew what I wanted to take, but I had no idea where I was going to stay, no idea how far I wanted to ride each day. So I completely winged that route for 4.5 months. So I totally I totally understand getting on your bike and having the freedom of riding without a plan. But if there's a few of you, you can't really do that. If you're on your own, you can. But if you're going to ride with a few of you, you need to work out. You have to have a bit more of a plan. Okay, sat navs to use or not. Some people like using only maps. Some people just like writing a list of roads down and sticking it on their tank. Some people like using sat navs. Personally, I love sat navs because it helps me to relax when I'm riding. I don't have to be worried about, I know I'm going to turn left on the B48 somewhere, but I have no idea if it's 2 miles, 5 miles, 15 miles. I think it's the B48, or was it the B72? I hate all that. All I have to do is look down and the sat nav says turn left in 7.2 miles. I love it. But I get it that a lot of people don't enjoy using them. If you're going on a longish tour, never ever try and plan your route in your actual sat nav unit, because it's very difficult to do, too time consuming, and you can quite often lose what you've put in. So always plan it on a computer, transfer it over to your unit. There's numerous software systems you could use, and I'm going to ask you at the end, if you don't mind, what systems you use, because I like to get a bit of feedback from other people. Personally, I've always used Basecamp, but I recognize that it's really difficult to learn and really difficult to use. It's very, very user unfriendly, but it does everything, and I've just stuck with it over the years. But a new one that a lot of people are beginning to turn to now is something called My Route app. You can use it on your phone or on a computer and then transfer it to your sat nav unit. It's very easy to use. It must be, because it's designed by Dutch people and they're very, very relaxed. I will probably swap from Basecamp to using My Route app soon. It doesn't quite do everything I want it to do. And I've been speaking with the people who write the software and giving them some ideas. And once they incorporate those, I will be swapping to that. It is because it is going to be that good. I talked about camping or hotels, and for me, it's an easy choice. I like the comfort of a nice bed, but I get it that some people prefer camping, and hotels can be very expensive. But if you're camping, it can be that if you're doing it on your own, you have to carry a lot of gear yourself. So it's far better to camp if there's a few of you going, and you can share the load of carrying burners and saucepans and all the other stuff that you need. But my recommendation would always be, before you go, even if you're an experienced rider and you've camped a lot, always do a test load of your bike and go for a test ride before your actual tour. Because if you don't, you could end up something like this lady. I met her in Sturgis in South Dakota, and she had just about everything on that bike. And if you look very closely, she's even got a dog on her lap. She was quite fascinating, but I'm not sure I could do that. That would be quite uncomfortable to have to load and unload that every day. Booking hotels has got a lot easier over the last few years. I always use a service like booking.com or hotels.com to find out about hotels. But then I always book direct with the hotels, as that saves the hotel money. These are, they charge quite a lot, these services. And so what do the hotels do? They're slowly putting up their prices because they have to pay so much to the hotels. So if the more of us who don't use places like booking.com or hotels.com, the cheaper it will be for all of us. So use them for the information, but book it direct. It makes much more sense. I always, when I'm going on a group, I always on my phone set up a WhatsApp group for all of the riders. And I recommend that you do that if you're ever going riding in a group together on a tour. I'm not just talking about a day's ride out, but for longer than that, because you can send messages for everybody in your group. You can swap ideas, make suggestions, ask questions, agree who's going to pack what. You can do all sorts of things. And on the tour, you can actually exchange photos. And there's always somebody who forgets what time you've agreed to meet for breakfast or whatever. So what I do before I go to bed, I just, in the hotel, I just send everybody a WhatsApp message saying, don't forget, breakfast is at 7:30 and we're going to leave at 8:30 or something like that. But the best thing about using phones is, you've all done it before. You're riding in a group and you get split up and you take ages to find each other. Use your phone to find each other, because if you use WhatsApp, you can set up a thing called sharing live location. So you can actually see where the other people in your group are. So you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen, this person set up their location for an hour. You'd probably do it for 8 hours. And you can see that that person can see the location of themselves and other people. It's perfect if, in case you get split up, so you're not riding around looking for each other. So I would always recommend using WhatsApp. Okay, part two, actually preparing for the tour. Some of the things that you need to consider. It goes without saying that if you're riding, especially in mainland Europe, you really must have breakdown and recovery insurance, because things do go wrong. And there's nothing worse than trying to speak to somebody in Italian, trying to get them to find a garage to come and recover your bike. It's far easier to speak to an English speaking recovery system. It's dirt cheap, just do it. An important thing to consider is, does your headlamp on your particular model of Harley Davidson need deflecting? Some are designed to point to the left, some are designed to point straight. If you're not sure, just ask your dealer. And if it needs deflecting, you really should, if you're riding on the other side of the road. You should always know how to put your bike into transport mode. It's sometimes called ferry mode. Particularly if you're going a long way on a ferry, like if you're going to Spain, there's nothing worse than coming down after 24 hours, going down to your bike and realizing that your alarm's been going off and your battery is flat. It takes seconds to put it into transport mode. It's in your manual, just learn how to do it. It's very, very easy. And you should also definitely know your PIN number for how to disarm the security system on your bike. I am constantly amazed by the number of people I go touring with who don't know what their PIN number is. They get a problem with their alarm system and I say, okay, just tell me what your PIN number is. I can reset your alarm system. And they say, PIN number? I've no idea. It's so frustrating. Just ask your dealer. If you don't know what it is, ask your dealer. They probably know. It's normally written in the back or front of your manual. If you don't know, ask your dealer. They can find it out and learn how to turn it off. Here's another tip. Loads of people don't know. If you don't service your own bike and your dealer does it, people don't know what sort of oil your dealer puts in your bike when you service it. It could be synthetic, semi-synthetic, or mineral. If you're on a tour and you're in a foreign country and you need to top up your oil and you need to buy some, you need to buy the right kind. Because you don't really want to mix up synthetic and mineral oil. It sort of separates in your engine a bit. It's okay for an emergency, but if you just know what your dealer puts in or what you've put in, then you can buy the right one. Preparing your bike for the trip, it's a bit obvious, but some people don't do anything. You know, at least get it serviced in plenty of time for the trip. You know, Harley dealers, as we all know, can get very busy, you know, putting new batteries in bikes and trying to get them started in May and June because people have left them over the winter. So book your service early, check your tires and think about, you know, don't think about what your tires are like now. Think about what they're going to be like in 2,000 or 3,000 miles after you've finished your tour. If there's any doubt, I would get it changed beforehand, or get your tires changed beforehand. Check things like, you know, when you put your rack on, that you know how to put it on. Make sure that all of the fittings are tight, that anything that you've added on, isn't going to come loose. And if you can, if you've got time, decide what you're going to pack it, or make sure it all fits. I always take a few basic spares. Okay, I'm a tour leader, so you'd expect me to, but the sort of things that I find that people don't take are oil, fuses. Hardly anybody takes fuses, and it's so easy just to pop one out and pop another one in. Kickstand springs. I now take there's about 3 different types of kickstand springs. I don't know whether it's just whether it's just us, but people tend to break kickstand springs on our tours. And obviously things like bungees, take a few spares, because these things cost pennies and it could save you an awful lot of hassle. Okay, what to pack? This is just a very quick guide. Agree who's going to carry what in terms of tools and spares. Don't all take the same things. That's pointless if you're going as a group. You can take tools, you take oil, you take this or whatever. Just agree it beforehand. Bike clothing, it obviously depends where you're going, and we all know, don't we? Wear lots of different layers is far better than wearing one big, thick, bulky layer, because you can adjust with, if you've got lots of thin layers, you can't really adjust with a big, bulky layer. Here's a tip. Always, if you're taking your bike keys and you've got 2, always take 2 and swap your spare bike key with somebody else. Because if you've got both of your sets in your jacket of your bike keys and somebody whips your jacket away because you left it on your bike, all of a sudden you've got no bike keys. So swap with somebody else, you carry theirs and they can carry yours. Breathalyzers in France, it is the law that you have to carry them, but there's no penalty. I always carry them, and I give some to everybody on my tours, because if you're stopped by the police for any reason, if you haven't got them, they can make your life a little bit hell. If you've got them, you're showing that you're complying with the law. They cost a couple of quid. Just take them. Here's a tip. These days, we've all got lots of technical stuff that we want to charge up in the hotels. Cameras, chargers, adapters, all sorts of stuff for your phone and for your iPad or what have you. And scrabbling around in a hotel room trying to find enough plugs. You have to unplug the fridge, unplug the television, plug all your own kit in. I just take a small 6-block extension lead on a 1-meter cable or 2-meter cable. I plug that into one socket in the wall, and I plug all of my tech into my extension lead. It's so much easier, and it saves. We've all been there, haven't we? We've ended up charging our phone in the one socket that's dangling over the the sink in the bathroom. Take an extension lead. Clothes, yeah, take lightweight clothes for the evening. That's a bit obvious. Everybody has their own sort of personal items. I always, a lot of us, taking medicine these days, I always carry a paper copy of my prescription in case I lose my medicine. Because if you go into a pharmacy or an apothecary in Germany and you say, I've lost my drugs I take, and I'm trying to remember what they're called, and they're never really too sure as to whether they should give them to you. If you take a bit of paper, your prescription along, and say, this is what I've taken, I've lost it, more often than not, they will replace your drugs for you. Take your prescription. Okay, what to pack is a massive subject. I've written quite a few motorcycling guides, and there's one on my website, number 9. It's on the 2-in-1 website. There's a whole section on there about motorcycling guides, and number 9 is all about suggestions as to what to pack on a motorcycle trip. Even if you only use it as a checklist, you might think, oh, I didn't think about that, maybe I should take that. And then you can just use it, print it off, and then use it however you like. I always say that plastic bags are a biker's best friend. And what I mean by that, Harley say that their luggage is waterproof. Aftermarket luggage manufacturers claim theirs are very often waterproof. They're not. We all know that, don't we? So I put everything when I'm going touring, everything goes in a plastic bag before it goes in my luggage. And even my clothes, I take Ziploc bags from Tesco's, the large ones, and I put a t-shirt, a pair of pants, or a pair of socks in there for each day. So all I have to do is pull out one bag. There's my fresh clothes for tomorrow. I'll put my dirty clothes back in that same bag and chuck it back in the luggage. And it just saves emptying all your luggage out and sorting it out. Ziploc bags are fantastic. I always pack the things that I might need when I'm actually riding in my right saddlebag, because it's easier to get to, because your bike leans over to the left. So that's presenting your saddlebag in an easier way. Plus you're on the correct side of the road, for standing on the pavement. If in mainland Europe, it's far easier to get stuff in and out of your right saddlebag when you're in mainland Europe. Paperwork that you should carry in Europe, lots of people forget about this. We're quite lucky in the UK that we don't actually have to carry anything, because our police are they've got a very relaxed approach to this, and they let us take stuff to the local police station if need be. But in Europe, most police forces want to see the original V5, or at least a very good photocopy, your insurance details, and your driving license, because they want to check that those 3 are all together. They've all got the same names on, and that is actually your bike that you're riding. I always carry them. It's quite easy to put them in your luggage, and when you get to, say, a hog rally or something, you go for a ride out, it's quite easy to leave it in your luggage and forget to take it with you on the ride out. So carry it with you at all times, or at least put it in your phone. Again, I'll try and remember to ask you at the end if any of you guys only carry stuff in your phone, and if you've ever been stopped, was that acceptable? Some countries, some police forces say that is, some don't. So I'd like to hear your experience of that. I always take a photocopy of the photo page of my passport and my driving license on my phone in case I lose my passport or driving license as well. And of course, I take my breakdown recovery details. So that's quite a lot of paperwork you need to carry with you. Part 3, actually riding on the tour. This catches a lot of people out. There's some unusual road signs that they have in most of Europe that we just don't use. And here's a few of them. We don't have that one. At least I've never seen it in the UK. And that means, that yellow diamond means on the road that you're on, you have right of way. Well, that might seem a bit odd because look, that's a main road that it looks like you're on. But the danger is when you see this sign, that means you do not have right of way on the road that you are on. And if you see that sign, you have to give way to vehicles on your right, even if they are on a side road. It's a crazy rule. It does work once you know it. It's very odd for people from the UK. But what it's meant to do is it's meant to slow everybody down, because if you're riding or driving along, if somebody's coming out of a side road and they've got right of way, damn right, you're going to slow down and prepare for it. So that's a sign really to look for. There's an awful lot of information on this side. You're obviously on the road number C2. The red border means there's a 50-kilometer speed limit in that town. And the other good thing about that sign is they make damn good cheese there. So watch out, that red border actually means something. So here's a bit of there's an awful lot of information here, and I deliberately took this on a bad day. So you're riding along this, what is a main road, and look, you've got all of those signs, or a lot of those signs, all together. So you're on the D23, obviously. You're entering a town called Des Moines, but because it's got a red border, it's a 50-kilometer speed limit in the whole town. But here's the trick. That sign with the diamond and the black line through it, because it's next to the town sign, that means in the entirety of this town, you have to give way to vehicles on your right. So wherever road you come up to, if a car, a truck, a bus, or even a cycle comes out of a side road, you have to slow down and let it out. They have got right of way. It's very odd for us, but I've seen so many people have near misses because they don't understand that. So I always try and tell people about what that sign means. This means very much the same sort of thing. It's used outside of towns, and it doesn't mean there's a crossroads ahead or a junction ahead. It means at the next junction, you must give way to people on your right. So there's my bike, and I've stopped just by one of those signs. And you see that little tiny little road on the right? If somebody came out of there, they have right of way over me. Again, it's just intended to slow people down. And it catches a lot of people out if they're from the UK. So be very, very careful if you see that sign. Laws in different countries, there's a lot of very odd ones. Filtering is done by lots of people in Germany, but it's completely illegal. The police turn a blind eye to it unless you have an accident. If you have an accident and you were filtering, they will throw the book at you. Beware. Speed in Germany, everybody in Germany seems to drive their cars or their trucks or whatever at about 2 kilometers an hour under the speed limit. And that's because they don't want to go over the speed limit. It's inbuilt into the German psyche, and they have really big fines, so they don't speed at all. Except on de-restricted autobahns where you can pretty much go whatever speed that you like. Not all autobahns, but some of them have no speed limits. They're very sensitive in Switzerland about noisy pipes. So if you're riding in Switzerland, do not rev your bike in tunnels or in towns. Harley riders don't rev their bikes in their engines in tunnels anyway, do they? They don't like to hear what their bike sounds like. Of course we do. Don't do it in Switzerland. You must wear gloves in France. It's the law. And they have to be kite marked gloves as well. They have to have the CE stamp on them. You must carry a high-vis vest in France. You do not have to wear it unless you're involved in an incident and you're standing at the roadside. You have to have one for your passenger and one for you. They're tiny. They roll up into tiny little balls. Take one. Helmet stickers. These are very often misunderstood. In France, you have to have reflective helmet stickers on your helmet, don't you? No, wrong, you don't. The law says that manufacturers have to make the stickers and put them in the box when they sell a new helmet. There is no law that says you have to stick them on your helmet. It's a bizarre French law. There are lots of them. You cannot ride with bare arms in Belgium. You must have sleeves of some sort. You are not allowed to use earbuds or helmet speakers in Spain. There are really too many different laws to mention here. So again, on the Tour One website, in the guides section, number 16 is all about European riding laws. I try and keep it as up to date as I can, but even for me, it's quite hard. So take a look at it and just remind yourself about what some of the odd laws are. I've cut this section down a bit. I used to talk quite a lot about riding in mountains because, frankly, we're just not used to it in the UK. But I've cut it down to just a few tips. Always go very slowly into hairpin bends, particularly right-handers, because they are quite often a lot tighter than you think they are. I take bets quite often when I'm on a tour about who's going to be the first person to drop a motorcycle on a tour, and it's normally an American. If there are any on the tour, because they go in, they expect a hairpin bend to be much wider than we have in Europe, and so they go in too fast, they get into trouble, they try and put their feet down halfway around the bend, and because of the slope on the road, they just can't hold their bike up. So I think it's much better to go in very slowly, even if it means stopping before you go in. Just get used to it. Have a look, look right up behind you and make sure there's nothing coming, and then proceed. It's far better to go in slowly than in too fast. I personally always use my rear brake when I'm going around hairpins because it makes the bike hunker down. It gives you better grip. Even as I'm powering out of the bend, I've still got my rear brake on because it's helping me go around the bend faster. I almost never use my brakes when coming down out of mountains, apart from really, really sharp bends where I have to slow down a lot. It's very easy to, if you're putting your brakes on a lot on a Harley, to overheat your brakes, and that boils the brake fluid. And as soon as you get air in that brake line, you're compressing the air when you pull the brake lever. You're not compressing the fluid, and that stops your brakes working. Pretty scary when you're coming down a mountain. I know, I've done it. So I'm always now probably 2 gears lower coming out of a mountain than I used to be when I first started riding in mountains. Use your gears to slow you down. Right, motorways and motorway tolls in different countries, they all collect their road taxes in different ways. Quite a few countries use vignettes where you buy a prepaid sticker and stick it on your bike. A lot use toll booths where you can pay with cash or cards, and some let you use transponders. I've got one for France and Spain. You ride up and the barrier automatically opens and then closes, and then you get charged on an account. All of that is fine, but look out for this one. Portugal have started introducing some motorways where you must have a transponder, and that's a bit unfair for foreigners who hardly ever go there. Just watch out for that one. You do get signs saying it gives like a Wi-Fi symbol, and it means you must have a transponder. Okay, loads of bikers get this wrong, and I learned why so many bikers stopped at toll booths and said that the toll booth appears not to be working. The toll booths work perfectly. It's just that we as bikers forget about some basic principles and we don't really know what to do. And this is the answer. This is a plan of a toll booth. The blue line is the barrier across the road, and the larger green box is the ticket machine. I've seen this happen so many times. 2 bikes roll up and they sit there next to each other, chatting away, but they don't realize that they're in an electromagnetic loop under the ground. Because they're both in that loop, the system thinks there's one vehicle there. And what happens? The person on the rider on the blue bike gets their ticket, presses the button, gets a ticket, passes it over to the red bike. So you go. and I'll get the next ticket or something like that. So the barrier goes up, the red bike rides away, and the blue bike is sitting there waiting, pressing the button. They normally do it about 27 times, and they say, this machine isn't working. But of course, it's not the machine's problem, because the system thinks that the bike has still not left that electromagnetic area. So do not pull up side by side in one of these booth areas. Go one behind each other, and then that will help you enormously. Also, don't go too close to each other, because the electromagnetic loop extends beyond your bike. And if there's a bike right up close behind the one in front, again, when he goes, the system still thinks that there's a vehicle in that electromagnetic loop. So stay quite a long way apart. Okay, we talked earlier about if your group gets split up, what to do. Okay, the best thing you can do is agree a plan amongst you in the group, what you're going to do, exactly what you're going to do if you get split up and somebody gets lost. Agree it before you start. Never, ever, ever ride around looking for each other, because that very rarely works. What you should do is you should stop and text each other, say, where are you? I'm lost. You know, don't telephone each other, because if the others are riding, they can't answer their phone anyway. Send a text. And what I recommend is that the lost person goes to a town and waits by a town sign. Here are some typical, it's French on the left, German in the middle, Belgium on the right. Wait by the town sign and then text everybody where you are, because at least then you know where you are. And then they can come and find you at that sign, because they know, especially if you're on, say, a French road, you can say, I'm on road C2 just outside Camembert. They know exactly where you are then. And then the others go and find them, or use WhatsApp. Just, you have to turn on your location. It does drain your battery a bit, so you have to use it with a bit of caution, but agree a plan beforehand. I wonder if any of you are going to Portoroz in 2021, now that it's been put back a year. Many chapter members do. You being a new chapter, I don't know whether you go on European rides. We can talk about that in a minute. But because it's been postponed, you've now got, if you are going, you've got extra time to plan a fantastic route. So you get planning and doing more stuff during this lockdown. Because if you think about it, if you're going to the Hog Rally, remember that map at the beginning were all of my favorite places to ride. So if you're going to the Hog Rally in Portoroz, look what you can do. You can actually plan a route through some absolutely fantastic riding. It's a wonderful opportunity to ride some of the best roads in Europe, because as we know, when it all goes well, touring on a motorcycle is just blooming fantastic, isn't it? This was going to Jerez a few years ago. This is in Tuscany. You can ride roads like Stelvio Pass. You can ride with lots of your friends, and you can make friends for life. This is the B500 in the Black Forest. I think these are all Black Forest pictures. Absolutely cracking roads. That's Furka Pass in Switzerland. Obviously in France, this is Timmelsjoch Pass in the Alps. You can ride in fantastic weather, have some lovely lunches and in some great places. That's Verdun Gorge in the south of France. You can make great friends. This is Splugen Pass between Italy and Switzerland. There's a great picture of Stelvio. Grossglockner Pass in Austria. St. Gotthard Pass in Switzerland. You can, and you ride with friends, and you can make friends for life out of going motorcycle touring. That's in Austria. This is up in the Alps somewhere. That's in Beograd. And so, motorcycle touring is just, we're so lucky to be able to do it. We know about how good it is to ride motorcycles and what it's like to ride in such fantastic places. Fancy being a car driver only and never experiencing that. That would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? Okay, so that's the end of my talk. Let's see if you've got any questions. What you're going to have to do, what I suggest you do, is if you're going to ask a question, turn your microphone back on. Well, you'll have to, but don't all turn them on at once. Just turn it on when you're going to say something. Who's got a question? Kevin's talking, but he hasn't turned his microphone on.
Hi, Gary. I'll
got it.
start.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, go on.
Go on, Steve. You start. Go on, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to say, Gary, you mentioned about the apps. I don't know whether you've tried it, but I find the Harley Ride Planner very good. Have you tried it?
I only tried it once and didn't get on very well with it because
Okay.
I do all of mine in fantastic detail, so it didn't really suit me when I looked at it. But I've heard quite a few people say that, yeah.
The other benefit of it is it's not sort of advertised and freely available over here, but if you log on to what's it called? You know, the Apple iTunes, is it?
Yeah, iTunes, yeah.
Well, if you make yourself an American log on for that to apple.com, you can get the Harley Davidson app from America, and as soon as you connect your phone then to your boombox, it's seamless. It talks to it. You haven't got to load it, download it. So I do use that, and I find it very good. But you have got to, on a computer. I use the Harley Ride Planner, and then you decide where you want to go. And once you get into it, and say the benefit for me is once you put the phone on the bike, it's seamless. It becomes the same sort of unit.
That's good. Yeah.
You can plan it on your phone as well, mine, and then send it straight to the bike there and then. I done it with Chris's last week.
Yeah, you can do it on the phone, Ian. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe on a 2-week tour.
Yeah.
I like a big screen and a mouse, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary.
Yes,
sorry, Steve. I ride and drive a lot in Europe, car and motorcycle. The last sort of 12, 18 months has been quite noticeable. Certainly in France, there's been a lot more speeding tickets chucked out, and certainly a lot more. I've consciously noticed a lot more police around. There's not so many speed cameras, but certainly groups of friends of ours have been hit quite heavily with speeding charges, including myself, for only about 3 kilometres over the speed limit in a car. The other thing that's concerning me a bit is obviously the noise issue, that many of us have very loud exhausts. That seems to be coming out on the motorcycle press quite a bit, especially Germany and maybe Belgium. Are you coming across this, or do you have any thoughts or comments on it?
We've only, in all the trips that I've done, I've never been stopped by a policeman with a speed gun or for any reason whatsoever. I was stopped by one policeman in Spain on a random roadblock. They were stopping everybody up in the mountains. Maybe I've just been very lucky, but I've heard the similar stories to you, Kevin. That, but yeah, we've tended to get caught with quite low speeds over the speed limits by speed cameras.
Yeah,
because they have quite, depending on different countries, they have some of them really do disguise their speed cameras quite well. Some of them are like black poles that go up in the air, and you think, oh, what was that flash? So yeah, I've heard of people getting like 2 kilometers an hour. In fact, I've had them myself, over the speed limit, and so yeah. And I've also heard that in a very few places in Germany, not many, that they've now just introducing bans on. Well, no, not a ban. They've got a decibel limit now of 86 decibels for any exhaust, whether or not your bike or your car was manufactured over that. Even if it meets, it's a homologated vehicle, you can still get done if it's over 86. They've only just introduced that this year, though. So I've had no experience of that whatsoever.
No, it's I spend a lot of time around the sort of Swiss, Italian, French Alps, I'm always conscious in the Swiss towns to keep the engine levels pretty low if I can. But as you say, generally we don't tend to ride within the heavily built up areas of, say, Geneva, Lausanne, anywhere like that. But consciously as well, I also spend time in Norway, which you were talking about earlier. I have a daughter living there, so I drive there quite frequently. They're extremely hot on speed in there, very, very hot, and very, very hot on drink driving as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no limit at all. It's and you don't drink. It's simple as that. And that's if you can afford to drink. That's the other issue.
The way that I treat it when I'm riding abroad is, if I'm in a town or a city, mainly a town, I will absolutely 100% stick to the speed limit. As a tour leader, I have to. I will ride at less than the speed limit. And the good thing is, if you're in a group, that allows everybody else in the group to sort of bunch up a bit and to catch up with each other. Then when I go out of the towns, then we open it up and we don't necessarily stick to the speed limits because we want a bit more fun. And I started touring. This is my 7th year now, and I do about 10 tours a year. So 70, about 70. I've done about 70 tours on average, about 10 days. That's about 700 riding days. I've got one speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just lucky. Maybe maybe I'm
touch
boring.
wood, I haven't had one on the bike. Had one in the car, but that's in about 35 years of driving over there. So I'm not going to complain about it. But noticeably amongst friends, bike-wise and car-wise, a lot more seem to be hit. And also they're coming in very quickly within 3 or 4 days of receiving them within Italy or France. And it's on your doorstep when you come home.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, Gary, you don't want to come riding with us because last May we went to Benelux. What do we have, Kev? About 20 bikes, was it?
Oh, about over half seem to have speeding tickets.
We racked up like €4,000 before I lost count on fines.
Holy smoke!
You got to ask who was the road captain.
Not me.
I had a ticket in March for March last year, 2019, from Italy, and it said because I was obviously outside of Italy, they could give you a ticket up to 12 months. So I had a ticket 11 and a half months later.
Wow.
Yeah, it came through just literally came through a lockdown, and it's I was picking a Lambretta up down in Italy, and I was down in Rimini, and I was only a few miles an hour over the speed limit. I have been down 147 miles an hour on the way to Rotterdam Ferry. And,
on a Lambretta?
I was on a 16 GT2 up with my wife on the back. They didn't like that very much, mine. When she said you were doing 150, she said, "You're doing 300." I went, "No, 150." They put the speedometer. No, she said, "Not kilometer." She said, "Miles per hour." So €11 fine later, I had to suck that up,
Yeah. Gary, can I talk to you about sat navs?
Yes.
I use my route app. I've done for the last 3 years. I used Thai before then, and I find this system. I know you've got to pay for it, but it's a superb system. It really is. You can use Michelin Maps on my route app if you want to. You got Google Maps. You got Here Maps. I think at the moment they got an offer, a lifetime membership for €90.
No, I've taken that up. I think it's.
I've taken it up and all because I was paying. I think it was €40 for 3 years, and it's coming up now.
Which one's that, Greg? What's it called?
My route app. It's what Gary mentioned before. It's a superb. You can link up with all your friends. You can send them all your routes. It's a really good system. It really is. I can't follow all the Great Western chapter using it. All the road captains, all the marshals are using it, and it is I know you're going to pay for it. That's the only problem. It's not free. There is a free one there, but you get shitty maps, and it's not worth it. You've got to either pay €40 for 3 years or a lifetime membership. But it really is worth it. Take from me.
You do have to pay, but it's so cheap. It's not really a consideration.
It is.
What they have just had a run-in with Google though.
Yeah.
One of the best things about it was that you could plan a route on your computer using Google Maps. And so you could see all of the information like hotel names and restaurants and cafes
Right.
that you get in Google Maps. You can't do that any longer because Google wanted them to pay too much money to use Google Maps. So, but that's a fairly small inconvenience. The other thing that you can't do, and the thing that prevents me from using it, is in Basecamp, you can say what time you're going to start riding. You can say how long are you going to be at a coffee stop, how long are you going to be at lunch, and it works out the time for the whole day for you. In my route app at the moment, you cannot add times to waypoints to say that I'm going to be there for 20 minutes for coffee. So it only calculates the total riding time, not the actual time. And as a tour leader, I need to know what the actual time is, not just the riding time. But they are going to add that, they tell me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think the boys in the Netherlands are really doing a superb job.
I agree.
It's a good system. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
Something worth looking at for the road crew, Greg, maybe.
Yeah, it's, you know, I know it costs a few shekels, but anyway, we're not riding, we're not driving. You're saving your money, and you're not going to the boozer.
Well, some.
What? Get in? No. Don't tell me the cross keys are open.
No, you need it. Close.
I was going to ask you a question. When you're riding abroad, do you take paper copies of your documents with you, or do you only take them on your phone?
No, I take the real ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry them in a plastic pouch.
Paper and real.
Always.
Any legal documentation by law technically should be the proper cover.
That's what I do. That's what I do. I take the real ones. I don't take my V5. I don't take the original of a V5. I take a very good colour photocopy, and that's been okay. But you're supposed to take the real one.
Yeah. I also take a a copy of all my credit cards as well.
Yeah.
Just in case you lose them, and it's easier to ring your bank and tell them what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all sorts.
It is dumb, isn't it, that the phone number that you need to ring if you lose your credit card is on your bloody credit card.
I know. I went to the Saint-Tropez rally going back a long time ago now, and I lost my passport. So I arranged a meeting with a consul in one of the ports, and she didn't wait for me, so I caught the ferry, and I went to the ferry company. So I lost my passport. The French company said, that is not my problem. It is the British problem. I said, okay, fine. So I get to Dover, and I said what happened, and they were good as gold. All I had to do was fill in a form, and off I went. So if you lose your passport, don't panic.
What I do is I take a photocopy of my passport, because then
I've done that ever since.
Stick that in with your other documents, and because then if you lose it, if you lose your passport, you just show that when you get back to Dover or wherever, and you're away.
I had one stolen at Dover Docks year ago Christmas, as I'd actually gone into the ferry terminal, and it went between clearing passport control and boarding the ferry, and the police gave me the option of either staying and carrying on with the complaint, or if you want to go. So I went. I thought I'll go continue with my ride. I have no issues abroad without it, but coming back, literally as somebody said, I got to the French passport control. He wasn't the least bit concerned through me the British side, and they were very pleasant, to be fair. It took about 5 minutes. They did a couple of checks and everything came up okay off your driving license. And I did actually make a point of asking if I carried it on my phone, is that acceptable? And they said, no, it's not acceptable, but it does help us to actually clarify your numbers, but they wouldn't accept it as a formal document, they said.
Yeah, that's the reason I carry a paper copy. It's not so that I can use it as a replacement, but just so it's got all my information on it, so they can look it up instantly. Yeah,
apparently they cross-reference for your driving license, I believe now.
Do they?
Yeah, they're linked. It's the same photograph on my driving license as my passport, and when you renew your passport, they suck it off the two.
That's right, they do. Yeah.
Gary, I always take copies, not the original Tim license, but I had an incident 2018. I had a virtually brand new bike, so the V5 hadn't arrived before the trip started, and sod's law, I get stopped in Spain, and it was broken English, but he was rabbiting on and say I worked out I lock you in jail or something like that. But luckily, 2 sports bikes went past about 120, and he decided to go and chase them instead.
So crotch rockets are helpful sometimes, yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know whether you should take maybe a copy of the invoice or the receipt if you haven't got a new bike before the V5 comes.
That would be a very good idea.
Yeah.
Because if you buy a Harley, when I've bought a Harley before, I've actually been given a computer printout, and it's got my name and address and the bike registration number on it.
Yeah, the invoice used to. Yeah, so that might be a good tip if you do go on before the V5 comes from Swansea.
Yeah.
Unless you put a private plate on like I did, and I didn't know which number was registered on my bike. And it took 4 months to sort it out with our local Harley dealer, but we won't go there.
Yeah, I rented a bike in Spain once and went into Morocco. There was a group of us, and the Moroccans, they check every document. And of course, the bloody renter had given me the documents for the wrong bike because he had loads of bikes. And I noticed it as I was queuing up to get into Morocco. I thought, oh no, but they didn't spot it. I was so lucky. Otherwise, it would be turn around, go back, ride all the way back through Spain to get the right documents. Do you want to hear a funny story about keys? You know, I was telling you about carry 2 sets of keys and exchange it with somebody else. I assume that you do that, do you? No, definitely do that. Definitely always do that if you're on a tour.
You only get 1 key with a Harley now. You don't get 2.
No, do you know what to do? You tell I think that's appalling.
Yeah.
You tell the dealer, I want 2 sets of keys and I'm paying you the agreed price for the bike, and I'm not going to buy it unless you give me another fob. You know what they're going to do? They're going to give you another fob. Give them a hard time. Don't let them get away with it. It's crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I was riding around America on that 21,000-mile trip, I had 2 sets of keys, and I thought 2 sets would be all right. I knew I was going to be away for a long time, and so I stupidly had them. No, I didn't. I had them. I had one in my luggage and one in the bike. One in my jeans, and I lost both sets of keys in the first week of a 4.5-month trip.
Good God.
I've got no idea where I lost the first set. That was on the first day somewhere. No idea. The second one I lost about a week later. I rode up. I wanted to go and see a reservoir, a waterfall, and I rode along this dirt track. And my sat nav told me to go along this dirt track, and it was fine. It was like 6 feet wide, nice and gravelly. But when I got there, I rode out on a different track. It said come out on a different track. And this track started off at 6 feet wide, nice and it got narrower and narrower and narrower. It got deeper ruts. And there was one hollow, which was like full of water. I thought, okay, I can get through there. And I did get through there, but I was like up to my knees in mud. It was absolutely horrible. So as I was riding along, this was in about August. It was pretty hot. I thought, I cannot turn up at the B&B I'm staying at tonight with these completely muddy trousers. So I saw a lake, and I thought, okay, I'll just wash my boots, wash my socks, wash my jeans, and it's so hot they'll be dry in half an hour. So I took the keys out of my pocket and put them on a rock, and so I could wash my jeans, and then I rode away and left them on the rock. Now, luckily, the bike, it was a 2006 Road King, and it was one that you had to press a button on. So unless you actually press the button, you didn't set your security system. It was the only way it would set. So I rode around America for about the next 2 months or so without pressing, because I couldn't lock the bike, I couldn't set the alarm. Anybody could have walked up to my bike at any time, turned it on and ridden it away. 2 months. I was so lucky.
That's because it was a Road King.
Yeah, all right, all right.
Sorry, Road King owners.
Hey, that was my first alley, our old king. Loved it, loved it.
I thought you did that trip on a soft trail, Gary. No.
No, that was on that Road King.
Oh, the Road King. Okay. Here's a question for you.
Hey, oh, look, there it is. There's my book that I wrote about it. Plug.
No, I've got the book. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
And there's the Road King on the back.
Yeah. I can see now. Yeah.
Yep.
Gary, here's a question that we quite often ponder over. What would you say was an optimal group size, and how do you manage? I guess you don't know people when they book. How do you manage riders of varying experience and
skills?
Okay, good question. Both two good questions. Group size, the ideal number for me is about 12, 13 or 14 bikes. Any more than that, and it's beginning to get a little bit unmanageable. I always ride as a tour leader. I always have a back marker. Any more than that, and sometimes you're getting so stretched out that you can't keep in contact with each other. Of course, we all know about, I call it the elastic band theory, that you're all riding along at the same speed, but you get stretched out and then you come back together, just like an elastic band. And that you obviously get stuck in traffic and traffic lights, and you can't all overtake the vehicles. So I find that 12 or 13 is about the manageable size for me. If I go any more than that, I really don't like it.
So on your tours, you'd only sell 12 places, or?
What I do is I book 12 rooms on our tours, and it's normally most times it's one bike per room. It's a single rider in a room, or it's a couple on a bike, but it's one bike per room normally. Sometimes you get 2 bikes per room, like two guys sharing, or a man and a wife both riding. So that's why I'm lucky that I normally get either 12, 13 or 14 bikes, and that's it. I did have 17 on one tour, and it was too many. If I do go more, sometimes like Portoroz, I sold so many tickets to go to so many places that I'm taking 2 groups on the road at the same time. So I have 2 tour leaders, 2 back markers, and we just run them 5 minutes apart or so. But I never go more than that.
Yeah, we've done that in the past. Split the group. Yeah.
And your second question about different levels of rider experience, I grade all of my tours as easy riding, moderate riding, or challenging riding. And I explain what that means against each tour. And so I have to trust the person who's signing up that they, for a tour, that they've read that, they understand it, and that that they, you don't get a new rider coming on a challenging riding tour, for example. So I'm very clear about those 3 categories, and it's only ever gone wrong once. Because I ask people to sign when they're filling in the booking form. I say, there's a question on there. I have read and I understand what this tour category is, and I confirm that I can do that. And the only real challenges are, none of you are Americans, are you? No, you're all Welsh by the sound of it. Americans all think that they can ride. And I say, you've got to be able to ride twisty roads, you've got to be able to ride in mountains or whatever. And of course, their roads are this wide, and they can ride in mountains, but they can't ride in our mountains and our twisty roads. And like I said earlier, the first person who normally drops their bike on Stelvio Pass, for example, is always a big fat American. Always. I could say, you're going to be the first one to drop your bike, and I'm nearly always right. And so that's difficult. So I have to think about Americans, and I try and give a gauge as to what I mean by somebody. If I normally say something like, you must have had at least 3 years experience of riding heavy motorcycles, 5 years or whatever. I try and make it as obvious as possible, but it's not easy.
No, come on. Ever had any sort of individuals on the groups disagreeing or falling out? And
luckily, only one.
Yeah,
we've had a bit unfortunate. He was quite an old American,
American again.
I don't know, I'm married to one, so I have to be careful what I'm saying. Yeah, but it was unfortunate. It was the last night of a tour, and this guy. I woke up. I'm quite an early riser, and I was in the hotel lobby at about 6 o'clock in the morning, walking through, and the hotel receptionist said, "One of your group is drunk in the car park, falling about all over the place." I thought, shit, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. What's going on? So I went down there, and this guy had knocked over 2 bikes, including mine. He was trying to lever mine up with a piece of metal that he'd found. He was trying to leave it up because he couldn't lift it back up. So I said, "What are you doing?" And he was acting as if he was drunk, but he wasn't. He'd actually mixed up his heart medication and his sleeping tablets, and he'd taken some sleeping tablets about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was just trying to fall asleep. And so there was no way that he could ride. And so because we did get the bikes back up, and we got him back on his bike, and he rode up the ramp out of the car park and crashed straight into a lorry. I said, "That's it, you cannot go anywhere." And he was quite belligerent and said, "Look, you're going to ruin my tour of a lifetime. I am going to ride on this last day." And I said, "You're not." And we took his bike keys away from him. And so that was the only time. But sadly, it wasn't his fault. It was his drugs. So, but yeah, you get people who you really like, and some people who sometimes you don't like quite as much. But yeah, my job is to like everybody, whether I do or not. Yeah. But
Gary, going back to the bike tours, quite often I've taken people through Cherbourg, and another regular when I get the problem is as you cross from Besançon in sort of eastern France back into the Jura Mountains, very frequently it kills the alarms on the Harleys. You can come off the ferry at Cherbourg and you'll end up with maybe 50% of the bikes are dead, and they're pushing them off the ferry and moving them around. And say the one peage I go through quite regularly, which is unmanned, and we've caused chaos there, and we've had bikes jammed there. In the end, I've had to sort of get a policeman to open the barriers and push them out. But it's apparently it's this magnetic field or whatever's around the peage. It knocks out the Harleys.
Yep.
Is there any way that you know of that can be blocked out, or
yep,
is it prevalent to certain years of Harleys? Or
it tends to be the older ones. What I do, I said, if you've got your PIN number, you can turn your security system off. If it's once the alarm's going off, you have to use the PIN number to turn it off, and then turn it off permanently. You can put it in what they call workshop mode.
Yeah.
That actually turns the security system off, because I've had exactly the same problem. We had it with we were at a petrol station on a motorway once, and it was the sensor that opened the doors, the electric doors, was setting them off. And so all we did, we worked it out, and we just pushed them down the road. And some people didn't know their PIN numbers. So
no, I've had that numerous times where I've even had to phone the dealer back in the UK where they bought the bikes and get it.
I think it is less of a problem on the certainly since they.
I think the newer ones aren't so bad.
Doesn't happen there, yeah.
I agree. It's the older ones. It's things like Diners and the older models.
Yeah, Sportsters I've had it happen a few times, and V-Rods. Some of the V-Rods.
You tend to have a lot of trouble when you go out touring, don't you, Kevin?
Well, I don't stay home often.
What's your surname, Kevin? Because if I ever get a booking from you, I'm going to say no.
iPad. Spend too much time on the continent. Spend too much time away.
I had the same sort of problem back in Saint-Tropez when I had a Road King. It was 2010, I think it was. And if you park on Saint-Tropez Harbour, we had to push the bike then all the way down the front with all these thousands of spectators. And did I feel an arsehole? I must admit. But then we went round the corner, away from the harbour, and it worked fine then. It was, it's just, and somebody said it's the aerials from the boats in the harbour could have caused it.
Yeah, it could well be something like that. And most of the time, if you push your bike quarter of a mile.
Kevin, we felt a pair of pricks.
And I'm sure those pricks enjoyed it, yeah.
I had it in Texas.
Most embarrassing, I must admit.
Yeah. I've got an embarrassing story. I'll tell you two embarrassing stories. One about a road king and one about a chopper in Saint-Tropez. I had a big chopper with long forks built, Wars built it, and I actually trailered it down to Saint-Tropez. God help me, so I hadn't ridden it much, and I was in Saint-Tropez outside the front of, in the port area, and everybody was looking at this bike. It's a very, very nice bike. And I got on it, went to start it up, and I hit the starter button, dead as a dodo. And of course, there's probably 20 people around me looking at this. I thought, oh shit, yeah, what do I do now? So I pretended, I was so stupid, I pretended my phone rang. So I took my helmet off and I answered my phone and I walked away a bit. And what I actually did was I rang Wars and said, my bike won't start. And I'm in a really embarrassing position. And so I talked to the bike builder and do you know what it was? I was in frigging gear.
Oh dear, dear, dear.
What a plonker. And the other embarrassing one was, this is even worse, this is on my Road King. When I was doing my proper job, before I retired and started doing this job of running motorcycle tours, I used to work for a big project management construction firm. And my expertise was working out how to build Olympic Games. So all of the facilities, say in Stratford for the London 2012 Olympics, I worked out how to build all of them. And so people were quite interested in my job. And so before the Olympics started, I used to give some talks about what I'd done on the Olympics. And I was giving a big talk in a West London hotel, and it was a nice hot summer's day. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to ride my bike here. It's a lovely day. So I just rode in a suit, quite a light colour, a light green suit. And I turned up and I knew this place had an underground car park. So I rode down the ramp into the car park. Yeah, and there's quite a few cars. This was about 8:30 in the morning. Quite a few cars going in because it was a big conference. And got down to there was a hut with the guy giving out tickets. He said, sorry, mate, we don't take motorcycles in here. I said, get out of here. What are you talking about? He said, you can't bring your motorbike in. You're going to have to take it out. I said, I am not parking this on the road. I'm parking this expensive motorbike in your underground car park. He said, no, you're not. And so we had a Mexican standoff. I wasn't going to give way, neither was he. So I thought, well, fuck it. I can't push it backwards up the ramp. I'm going nowhere. So I turned the bike off and went to find the hotel manager. And so there's all these cars behind me. And so I found the hotel manager and said, look, I've been told I can't park my bike in there. And he said, well, look, he came down there. And so there was about 10 cars on this ramp, absolutely livid with me. And I didn't give a toss. There's nothing I could do. And the reason that they gave was that people went and parked there in cars, went off on holiday, parked there for a couple of weeks, and then they came back with their moped or something, got another ticket, riding in with their moped, pushed the moped out and used that ticket for that day to get their car out. So effectively they got parked for free. So I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I was full of my own self-importance. I'm giving this big lecture here. You're going to let me in. So they did let me in. The hotel manager convinced this, because it was a separate company that ran the car park. So they lifted the barrier up. I got on my bike and dropped my fucking bike right in front of everybody. I thought, oh no, it's the only time I've dropped this bike. So I went round to the right side and I was so pumped full of energy, I just lifted it up and went to get back on it and it fell over the other way. And then I couldn't lift it up again. So I had to ask one of these car drivers to come and help me. I felt about that big. I was so embarrassed. And then, of course, I was all hot and sweaty and this suit was, it was horrible. That was my really embarrassing bike story.
Oh dear, all good fun. I noticed on your highlights of Europe, you didn't pick out the Picos to Europa mountains. They're really exciting to ride if you like mountain rides on the way down to Spain.
They were inside one of the green circles, Kev.
Well, yeah, just
Yeah,
about,
the green,
I suppose.
that circle did sort of go out there. I didn't mention it, but I should have done, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Funnily
nice
enough, I've
area.
just announced a new tour going to the Picos and the Pyrenees. I announced it
Okay.
today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
it's
new one
nice
coming
down
up. Yeah, it's a nice area. Very nice.
Yeah.
Here we are. Good. Good.
All right. Well, look, what's the time? Okay, it's we're cracking on a bit. Should we call it a day there?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, Gary.
Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
very much. It's I've done a lot of European riding, but there was stuff in there which I've written down and noted to myself. So I think no matter
Your notes.
who you are, you can always learn something by these sorts of things by talking to other riders. Definitely. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you want, Steve, if you want me to do another one, I do a talk about this, about my 21,000 mile ride around America. That's proved to be quite popular. So if you want me to do another one, I'd suggest that one.
yeah, okay, Gary. Yeah, I say I've got no problem with that. I thoroughly enjoyed this tonight, and we're still in lockdown at the moment, so we got nothing else.
Can't go anywhere.
Well, make the most of me. They're all free. I just enjoy doing them. So
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
if you want me to.
Very useful tips in there, some useful things, even though I do ride a lot in Europe, there's some good reminders as well.
Good.
Yeah, indeed, I enjoy that.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
guys. Well, I will certainly remember talking to the bearded ones.
Yeah. That's what we've been doing. You go and tell Marge now. We were the bearded ones. Yeah.
The bearded. New name for the chapter, Steve.
Okay.
The
I'll see
bearded
you
chapter.
guys. See you guys. Football's calling.
Cheers, Greg.
All right.
Well,
Well, thanks a lot,
Gary,
guys.
thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you very much, Gary.
See you later.
We'll speak later.